If you think graveyards are quiet at night, you haven't stood in one when the moon is thin and the town is asleep. The silence isn't empty. It's full of expectation, like a held breath. Shadows don't just fall there, they gather. I went to the cemetery that night because a promise had been made, and by the time the moon bent back into a sliver, I understood how much of grief is work done in the dark. I am not a thief. I work in an office with a ledger and a battered umbrella. I like my life's edges clean, but small towns keep ledgers of their own. Favors owed, apologies never quite paid, promises made in the soft rush between one year and the next. The promise that pulled me to the graveyard was one of those informal claims. Mrs. Patel, my neighbor, had asked me for something she said she could not get any other way. Her son, Amit, had been buried with a plain shroud and a coin. Sewn into his pocket, she insisted, was a scrap from her wedding sari, a piece she'd embroidered and smelled of turmeric and sun. After the grave was filled, she couldn't sleep. "It must be with him," she said. "I can't rest until he carries it." The cemetery was sealed. Official exhumation required forms and fees she couldn't find. So she asked me, in the gray hours, to find the scrap and bring it back. It sounded foolish until she spoke the way old people do when they have nothing left to barter but conviction. I agreed because the list of small debts I had ignored was growing. Returning that scrap felt like a tidy, human thing to do. The town cemetery sits on a river slope among pines and a low stone wall wrapped in ivy. Daytime, it's civic and ordinary. People sweep stones, lay flowers, feed pigeons. But night changes everything. Stone faces go sharper. Paths rearrange themselves under moonlight. I carried a torch and a small spade. Not for exhumation so much as to make possible the modest opening I intended. Lift the outer sod, free an edge of fabric where the shroud hadn't been tucked cleanly, and retrieve the scrap. It was a quiet robbery in service of a grieving woman's peace. The gate squealed on an ancient hinge. The moon was a thin coin, clouds like burnt lace. I moved like someone who knows how fragile places are. Slow feet, soft breath, hands kept to myself unless an object needed handling. The grave was tamped, sod pressed neatly into a green skin. I knelt at the foot of a meat stone, small letters, dates, and the phrase, "always in our mornings." I dug carefully, snipping roots, folding turf into small piles, so the whole looked temporary and tidy. The cloth edge finally showed, damp, darker than the lining of earth, smell of lemon and turmeric, as Mrs. Patel had promised. I eased the scrap free and let that scent close over me like a benediction. And then something moved in the trees. A figure detached itself from shadow. A person in a long coat, head down, steps slow, as if listening to the ground. In my torchlight, the skin looked too pale. Eyes reflecting the beam like coins. She was younger than her posture suggested, a woman who had learned sorrow long enough to turn it into work. When she spoke, her voice was low and steady. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm not hurting anyone," I said. "Mrs. Patel, her son, she needs the scrap." "You're making it worse," she replied. "These places are patient. People put things here and the earth sorts it out. Retrieving what belongs isn't always returning. Sometimes it wakes what was meant to sleep." She had the air of a guardian, not official, not public, chosen by something older than municipal rules. Her name, later, she let me call Ronnie. She said the graveyard kept more than bones. It kept debts, secrets, small tokens the living thought would heal things if they could just get them right. The earth is a ledger, she told me. It consents to silence. You must be willing to accept that some reprieves are for the living as much as the dead. Mrs. Patel can't sleep, I said. She wants the sorry edge. You can take it, Ronnie said at last. But know this, you will bring back what you take. It will come with you in ways you cannot count. It sounded like a riddle and a warning. I folded the scrap into my palm and stood with my palms dirty, the dirt a dark ribbon across my skin. We walked out together. At the gate, she stopped and pointed to the fabric in my hand. If you find anything not cloth, she said quietly, do not hide it. Bring it to me. I thought she meant extra things, a coin, a photograph. I did not imagine what would follow. At Mrs. Patel's house, she pressed the scrap to her mouth, folded it into a small sealed box, and tucked it into a cupboard. She slept that night for the first time in weeks. Relief lined her throat in a way I'd never seen in a neighbor. I went home thinking the matter closed. The next morning, a wrong smell floated over town, sweet, then metallic. Dogs at the market grew restless, sniffing and pointing toward the river. The caretaker at the cemetery, old, half-sentient with long hours, came to my office and asked bluntly, "You were there last night?" Guilt taught me to lie. Briefly, I admitted the truth under his sharp stare. "You fetched something that was better left to the dirt," he said. Graves remember the way the earth wants to fold things away. People who take them out sometimes bring a companion back with them. It's like waking a sleeping dog that remembers its master with bad teeth. That night, my apartment felt thicker, walls folded inward. Sleep brought odd dreams, hands reaching for the cloth, shapes pooling under my bed like bad weather. A low scratch of fabric across my living room floor woke me at 3 a.m. The sorry scrap unfolded on the couch, a ring of dust around it in tight, concentric circles. A strange shape in the center I couldn't name. The embroidery gleamed as if new. When I touched it, a cold slid up my arm like water. I told myself the mind makes ghosts for comfort and punishment. I looked for explanations. Prankster neighbors, rodents. Security footage at the corner showed only a faint smear crossing the lens at 2 a.m. Not a figure, only a distortion. Real life gives smears where films give phantoms. Then, the visitations grew less coy. My phone rang with unknown numbers that held long silence on the other end. Photographs on my mantle were inexplicably re-signed. The signature wasn't ink, but a faint mineral scent, soil pressed into the paper. Sometimes small domestic kindnesses showed up, a clean plate on the counter, a kettle already boiled. The presence was confusingly domestic and unnerving, as if some debt had decided it wanted attention rather than anonymity. I went back to the cemetery, arrogant and scared, to return the scrap and say aloud that the deed had been done. Ronnie sat by the water and listened while I confessed the disturbances. She did not seem surprised. "You fetched a thing that had a friend," she said simply. "It isn't the sorry that comes with you. It's whatever was threaded through it. It will visit until it's been acknowledged." "What does it want?" I asked. "A sentence," she said. "A name, to be remembered by more than one mouth." So I began to speak Amit's name aloud, anywhere, in the shower, at the bus stop, rinsing a dish. I repeated Mrs. Patel's phrase about him. Always in our mornings. Sometimes a faint breath answered in my house. Often, nothing did. But the presence shifted. It wanted conversation, not chaos. Little kindnesses replaced sharp intrusions. The terror softened into an awkward hospitality. One night, it asked for more. It came in a dream and left one line that chilled me awake. Place me where I can listen. When I told Ronnie, she nodded. The cloth was a knot. Unknit it and find what was threaded through. If it asks to listen, it wants a gathering place. It wants names. Put the sari on a stone at the ghat and call its name. It sounded like the logic of a ritual, private, not institutional. I cleaned the scrap until the embroidery shone and waited until the town surrendered to sleep. Ronnie met me by the river as if she had been part of the plan the whole time. We set the sari on a flat stone near the water. The colors bled into moonlight. She asked me to tell one short story about Amit, nothing grand, a single honest sentence, and to repeat the mother's favorite phrase. I said the sentence. I said he stole mangoes from the neighbor's veranda and blamed the dog. I felt foolish, tender, and truthful. The river breathed. For the first time that night, the cemetery seemed to lean in. Then the air changed as if a hidden door had opened. A presence stepped from the edge of the water, not the cinematic apparition of movies, but a weight of attention, a felt and dignified awareness that settled around the stone like an old coat. It did not approach with menace. It folded in around the sari as if making itself comfortable. I felt not cold, but a fullness. The sensation that a silence had been filled with a remembered name. A sense of thanks brushed the edge of hearing. Ronnie smiled, and for the first time, the night's strangeness felt less like punishment than completion. You did what it needed, she said. You let it be heard. After that night, the disturbances mostly ceased. The photographs remained unsigned. The scrape of cloth in my hall did not return. Mrs. Patel slept with her palm pressed to the box. The caretaker nodded at me, a look that mixed disapproval and gratitude, and Ronnie returned to her quiet rounds, unnoticed by the town, but essential as the river's current. What I learned from that night is modest and brutal. The earth keeps accounts in ways we do not always respect. Taking something back from the dead can restore a living person's sleep, but it may also unknit a different claim sewn into a pocket. Things buried with people are sometimes more than objects. They can be the threads by which the grief of a community is held together. If you pull at one thread, be ready to find what is woven through it. The ending is not a thunderclap. There are no sudden miracles. The sari lay on the stone at dawn, colors softened, the river moving on like a slow animal. Ronnie hummed a tune without words and tucked the last of the ashes into a cloth she placed between two stones. I sat until light warmed the world and then walked away with a small, irrevocable knowledge. I had been entrusted with a thing that was not lawfully mine, and in returning it, I'd been obliged to listen. If you ever find yourself near a graveyard at night and the wind seems to whisper a name, pause. Light a candle instead of a torch. Sit and listen. If you must move something, bring it into the light and call the name written with it. Speak one short, honest sentence about the person it belonged to. Sometimes that is all a thing asks, not erasure of grief, but a human voice to confirm the life it marked. That voice can be a mercy to the living and a harbor for what would otherwise roam.